Welcome to Avant-Garde Entrepreneur. I am so glad you're here today with me, my friend. As you know, this show is uniquely designed to help you skip the overwhelm, burnout, and frustration by borrowing what actually works from the best and brightest in the industry today. Today, we are kicking off a series on upleveling your impact business. Marketing, finance, and fundraising are by far the most popular topics searched for on the podcast, ranking right up there with goal setting. And I love covering these in the first part of the year and bringing guests who are at the top of their fields to share firsthand information on the trends and things that are coming down the pike, as well as evergreen principles that they use in their business every day. So while the principles may remain the same, we're always evolving. And so we might tune into new information based on where you are in your business. So this will be an episode that you can listen to over and over again, because as you evolve, you're going to hear things in a different light. And you'll pick up these gems of wisdom that will help you to be able to apply them to your business to make it more sustainable for you and more impactful for the people that you serve. So today we are covering marketing and branding trends with my friend, Sydney Sam. Sydney is a global speaker, trainer, and founder coach with over 14 years experience building businesses and empowering entrepreneurs. From staging concerts in Africa to running a thriving creative agency and now leading a global tech startup, Sydney's learned what it takes to turn bold ideas into impactful realities. And today, Sydney works with incubators, accelerators, and corporate teams to foster innovation, to build strong brands, and to drive growth. His mission is to empower entrepreneurs like you to think bigger, bolder, and scale smarter. Sydney also leads a global mission to connect the world to Africa's global digital workforce. He's built WorkspaceGlobal.com, a six-figure tech platform connecting growing brands worldwide with top design firms and teams from Africa at scale. Sydney was recognized as one of the Forbes 30 Under 30 and also leads a nonprofit called Openspace. He is constantly giving back, and you'll see that today. I can go on and on about Sydney's accomplishments, but I'll stop there. Suffice to say, he is an expert in branding and marketing. So, Sydney, thank you for being with us today.
Hey, Trisha, thanks so much for having me on this podcast. I am a big fan, and so this is indeed an honor.
Oh, thank you. I talked a little bit about your professional accolades. Tell us about yourself, where you grew up and what your early career was like.
That's good place to start. So, Sydney is a father and a husband. So that's where I always started. I'm a big family person. I am an entrepreneur through and through, and I love to just help people see clearly. So you can see I'll be someone who enjoys talking to people and helps people to peel off problems to be able to get to wherever they're going. And whether that's professional or in person, that's just what I love to do. I was born and raised in a country called Ghana in West Africa. It's growing in popularity recently because there's a lot of diaspora and a lot more people are taking interest in the country Ghana. Fundamentally, I started out as a business student in university, actually even going a little further back in high school. I went to high school at the age of 12 when everybody goes to the age of 15. So that was a bit of an interesting start to my life. So I went into university also quite early. That was at the University of Ghana. Genuinely, and probably to a lot of people listening to this podcast now, I haven't always known what I wanted to do. So when I went into university, it was more, I chose business because you didn't have to major in the beginning of university compared to other courses where you pick a very definite path, right? I could do business for about 2 years and then decide which route I wanted to go. So that's actually what got me into the world of business. And very quickly, from what I was learning in class, I realized, this sounds like something I would like to experiment with really quickly. I didn't want to wait too long to be able to do that. So I started my first business in my sophomore year. And that's what led to me building the concerts, and it just set a bit of a roller coaster in terms of what my life is like today. So that just gives a little bit of context to who I am.
So what inspired you to start Workspace Global?
So the big thing, really, Workspace started out of a need that I had. So remember the business I just spoke about, which was, this concept that required external support, corporate support to be able to supplement our revenue so that we could survive. Now, I knew this was necessary, but I could never figure out how to place myself or position myself in a way for people to take us seriously. So sometimes we might get a meeting. Most times we wouldn't be able to get a meeting. People kept saying your branding was off. You seem like a very junior organization. We can't find you on the internet. And that's what really got me started. And obviously I was in school, so I wasn't able to really hack at it till I figured it out. But once I was done, I was like, this is a major problem because there were so many other people who shared the same issue where they didn't know how to position themselves. They were underpricing. They didn't know what branding was, what marketing was, and where to even begin if you needed to speak to someone about this. And that is what led me to building Workspace, which would solve the problem of small businesses and entrepreneurs being able to access branding support and marketing support in the way that they needed.
That's incredible. And that you started so young. How old were you
Yes.
when you started the concert series?
The concert, I was 16, 16, 17.
16.
So yeah,
Wow.
16. Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
I admire that so much because there have been so many times in my life where I held myself back. I thought, I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. And I love that hearing someone who you
Yeah,
didn't know any difference, and you just dove right in. That's amazing.
exactly.
As the business has evolved, obviously you
Mm,
have a lot of firsthand experience doing this for yourself as well as doing this for other people. And you've
mm,
obviously educated a lot of, I'm sure that there's a big education process that comes along as
yes.
you're working with clients. How do
Yes.
you explain to your clients the difference between branding and marketing?
It's a good one. And I will use the extension of my story to segue into that. I started out building an agency. But what an agency meant to everyone had to do with advertising and not necessarily creative. And this is a very interesting, that really opened up my world to how branding and how you market yourself could really make a big difference. Because as soon as you say the word agency, people are evaluating you on the basis of what they already know and what they think you are. And if you don't market yourself properly, that issue sets misguided expectations, et cetera, et cetera. So that was a major problem for me when the agency began because we were a creative agency and not an advertising agency. So let's talk about what that even means. Branding is about how people feel about you and the perception you hold within the mind of the people who are connecting with whatever you're doing in the world, right? So technically, you can't really do anything about your brand. You can only influence it because it exists in the mind of the people who are perceiving you. Now, marketing is all the activities you engage in to help people understand exactly how you can help them, okay, and help them make a decision about letting you help them. So you can see that there's a slight difference, even though they are quite interconnected. Branding is evoking an emotion, influencing an emotion, creating a perception. Usually, I would say when your name answers a very clear question, right? Like, so who do I go to if I wanted to speak to the most fun dentist in, let's say, the Bay Area? If your name answers that question, you built a very clear brand, right? Now, marketing has to do with all the emails you're sending out, the things you're posting on social media, all the different things that you do to educate people about what you can do to help them. Then talking about pricing, talking about benefits, talking about timelines, making offers. All those things come together to help the person make a decision. So, whilst you are doing that, yes, you are indeed building your brand, but you can see there's a very clear difference in terms of the activities and then the influence and the emotion that you evoke when you're building your brand. I hope that is helpful.
That's a really helpful explanation.
Mm,
I think, especially thinking of branding in terms of taking ourselves as entrepreneurs, we tend to think that we should. I don't want to say control in a negative way, but that everything that we're doing is the cause of what's happening. And when you think about branding as the subconscious, it's really what's going on in the consumer's mind. So you can affect different things, but really everyone has a paradigm. already.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
That's just
I
what
like
it
that
is. Yeah.
distinction. When you're working with your clients or when you're coaching business owners, what are some of the essential branding and or marketing elements that every business should have?
I'm very big on first principles, so that's going to be the perspective to which I'm going to approach this question. And then also, I really want to encourage people to focus more, because every time your goals are as far away as to how well you can focus, right? That's basically the idea. So when people ask me what are the most essential branding elements that you need, I say double down on understanding the clarity of who you serve, specifically who you serve, who will value your work and who can pay for that, right? So most people will just call this your target audience. But before you jump into your logos and your colors and your type and all of those things, you will recognize that, for example, if you identify that you serve a very specific group, they will inform the colors that you pick, to represent yourself, right? Or to stand out, right? So it's really important that you dive deep onto who you serve so that you identify your purpose. And, we already know your value proposition, but your purpose and your why really ties to your major branding element because it defines everything else. Then on the basis of that, you can then look at what do you want to look like? Now, it's interesting because we live in a very digital world. The assets you might be thinking about is your social media and your website, but you also exist in a physical space, right? So it could also be what the color you decide to paint your walls inside your office and outside your office. It could be the pictures and the t-shirts that you will wear, the way you wear your hair. All these things are elements that you have to decide on based on the initial bits that we focused on. So the question is, what do you want to look like? And then you make a number of decisions based on what people are going to see and perceive to be able to decide if they want to work with you. So that will then inform if you want to work on your logos or your websites, et cetera, et cetera. Then the third thing, we've firstly figured out our source and our core and our soul. We've then figured out what our body is, what we want to look like. And then the next thing is about what you want to put into the world, right? So how you speak and what you say. So you need to decide on, hey, I'm going to be a business that is focusing on empowerment and ensuring that people feel, encouraged and people feel like they can do anything. And that's completely fine. I could literally be selling juice, but the elements I want to pick are that this juice makes you feel on top of the world and makes you feel like you can do anything. The other thing also is I could decide that I want to emphasize on people's stress and say this juice is just so refreshing that it knocks all your problems away. Completely different things that you want to say, but because you've decided on that, it really comes through in everything that you do. Then we can come to the marketing element. So I know everyone was expecting me to talk about logos and fonts and stuff like that, but I want to go to the basics. With marketing, the first element is a compelling offer. Now, what that means is, okay, what if I'm selling lemonade and it's, $5? Don't I already have an offer? Well, not necessarily. You can have a product and you may not necessarily have an offer. So your offer might be get access to instant lemonade, within 30 seconds when you pay $5, that's going to make your day better. That is an offer. So the person is paying for the outcome, knowing that in 30 seconds, you're going to remove all their stress for the day. That's the offer. And that's what you communicate. And that way, you know what you're putting on your social media or your website or your t-shirt or your flyer or your billboards. So it's really important to double down on what is the outcome the person wants, how much is it going to cost them, and how quickly or how much friction you remove from them being able to reach that value. Second thing, everyone knows this, content. What are you going to do to help people understand what you're offering, right? So then you can decide, you can work through that. And then the last thing is, where are you going to connect with folks? That could be anywhere. It could literally be at your tennis club. And it doesn't necessarily always have to be on social media or on a website for it to be a good marketing channel. A marketing channel is where your customers are fundamentally, and you speaking to them in terms of where they get the information. So these would be the biggest elements that I would recommend that most people think about if they absolutely have to strip down and work on something for their branding and marketing.
That's excellent advice. What you talked about with the offer, I think that has been one of the biggest challenges or surprises for me in
Mm,
business when I realized it's not what I offer, it's how it makes them feel. and what it does for them. And so
Yeah.
I kind of had the example you gave of the lemonade. I had my version of lemonade, and then I learned that, oh no, it's not about the lemonade. It's about
Lemon.
what the lemonade gives them and how, and also how quickly they can get it. We live in such a fast pace. How can you remove the barriers to entry?
Mm, mm, mm.
Great advice. Great advice, Sydney. So obviously what you shared, fundamentals, never going out of style. What are some of the marketing trends for 2025 that
Mm.
entrepreneurs should be aware of?
This is a big one because if you don't consider some of these things, you'd completely miss the ball. Okay, so some of them are a little closer to the first principles, but some of them are just new world trends that you need to take note of. So the basics, number one, the world has gone back to authenticity, right? And people want authenticity and social responsibility at scale. So if your business or your brand or your marketing isn't communicating how it also helps people outside your customer and helps the world make the world a better place, you're going to not resonate very well with your customer, right? Because people care a lot more about things like the environment, things about inclusion, things about just general social responsibility. And people can also tell if you're not being very authentic and you're putting on a persona, right? If you're a skater bro, be a skater bro. You'd be surprised that, that would resonate with a very specific audience and people like that. And technically, one thing most people need to recognize is that a good brand doesn't mean everyone likes you. It means the people who like you a lot, and the people who don't like you at all. That's usually where you want to be, right? So authenticity and social responsibility has become a huge trend that a lot of large companies are hiring consultants, especially like me, to really figure out how they can bring that across. So that's a big thing. The second thing is pretty annoying one for a lot of us. Video is selling like crazy. People, and even the video doesn't even have to be perfect as long as it was shot in a moving picture. People will prefer that over a static photo or design or flyer. Like people would really resonate with you just getting in front of a screen, recording a live video, and just saying, hey, this is why I'm selling what I'm selling, and this is what it is. You'd be surprised at how much better that's going to do. And obviously, a lot of our technology is wired to promote that as well. So all the algorithms on TikTok, on LinkedIn are skewed to pushing more video content. So if you don't want to go against the grain, just do a lot more video in relation to what you're doing. The third thing is personalization at scale. I cannot emphasize this enough. People want to feel like you're speaking directly to them, even if you have 1 million customers. So you never want to say, dear valued client. People want to hear, hey, Sydney. People want to see that you checked on their birthday, you checked on how they're doing, and that is the relationship that they have with your business. So if you have 1,000 customers or you plan to have 1,000 customers, start to think about ways by which you can document relevant information, your name, your birthdays. I mean, obviously, this will segue into the next point, but it really pays for people who really know their customer. They really get a lot out of them regarding that. And a lot of people will start to learn about this concept called lifetime value, which means a customer is a lot more than the first time they buy from you, and you want them to keep buying over a long period of time, right? So that kind of relationship is important in marketing. Now, I'll flip the remaining two. Data privacy is a huge one. If you're a company that is not taking data privacy seriously, especially in your marketing, if your marketing is just blatantly, it doesn't show respect to how you're using someone's data or you don't ask them permission before you take certain information from them, you will start to gain a lot of attrition. People are going to fall off your marketing campaigns because they don't feel very safe, with you. So data privacy is a major one that a lot of people are focusing on. And the last thing is user-generated content. A lot of customers want to see what other customers are saying, not just testimonials, but if other customers are posting that they're using your product, people want to see real people doing real things with your stuff, right? That is a big trend, for 2025. So I hope that's helpful to our listeners.
Oh, I think that will be very helpful. I think I might chime in a little bit on the video thing for people
Yeah,
because, as you said, it's
cool.
the thing that's kind of the biggest pain for most of us. When I started podcasting, video wasn't as popular, but I thought if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to do video too.
Mm,
And
mm,
it was so darn hard because podcasting was weird enough to like integrate it into my life because you want to be consistent and like
yeah.
what you talked about with the brand, I wanted to have I just had this certain vision for the quality of content that I
Mm, mm,
wanted to put out. And then when you add the video, that is a whole different dimension. But I
yes.
want to encourage people that if you can just start, and like what you said, authenticity is key. I've gone out on a whim a couple times and just
Mm,
posted something that I just had my hair up, no makeup on, and just said, "Oh, I'm just going to do it just to see what happens." And people really, really like that. People, I mean, I think we all like looking at YouTube shorts. Oh my gosh, I don't even watch much video and I get sucked into those things. And and so if you think about that, people really you think about what we like to watch, people want to see the same things. So
yeah.
be bold and get out there and just know that eventually it will be less uncomfortable.
I agree. Just to add something really quickly before we move on, just think about it in relation to if you had a friend or you wanted to speak to your cousin or your sister, if they sent you a text to say happy birthday, that's okay. If they sent you a voice note or even more, it feels a little bit warmer, right? But if they video called you, that feels good, like, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the way, just think about it from that perspective, and if she video called me without makeup, I'm still happy she video called me, so that's a big thing. Yeah.
Yes. And you probably appreciate her more because you know she feels comfortable with you to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Great
Exactly.
insight, Sydney. We work with entrepreneurs here at Avant-Garde Entrepreneur. Some are just
Mm,
getting started. Some are still at college or university and thinking
yeah.
about starting a business. There are a lot more classes now on social entrepreneurship. And there are also people who have been in it for a while. So
Mm,
for our people who are just getting started or thinking about starting a social enterprise or an impact business, they
mhm,
have like zero budget.
yeah.
So, what are your tips for someone who is just getting started?
Well, I mean, I always say, don't take the long route. So that's something that we will talk about at the end, but it's really what I'm screaming about since 2024, that don't take the long route, right? So I would always recommend that before you even think of investing any money, focus on asking questions. And the best people to ask questions to are your customers. I don't, and even if you don't have any customers, but the people you want to help, the people who, so for example, if it's a social enterprise, there would be beneficiaries, people who you're serving. Then there would be people who will help you to serve those people. So there will be partners who say, hey, I have some funding and I would like to, things like that, right? Go to them and ask them questions, literally, like, book a meeting or book a call and just call. And once you start to interact with them, you will start to recognize, your basic stuff. So where do you want to get your information? What are the problems that you're facing? Who do you like in this industry? Just ask those real questions. It doesn't have to be a survey. You don't need to do a huge, research think tank or anything like that. Just find 5 people or 10 people and actually talk to them. And on the basis of that, you will then have a hypothesis upon which you will then build your business. I would always say if you have a zero budget, like a zero budget marketing budget, always start with community. And when I say community, it's the idea that you tell a bunch of people. So everybody has at least 10 people on their WhatsApp or 50 people that you probably went to school with, and you get their numbers and you send them a WhatsApp message. I still do that today, 14 years down the line. This morning, I sent a message individually to 800 people this morning saying that it was our 10-year anniversary, and I would love for them to refer me to somebody else, right? It still works, right? So build that community of potential customers, potential advocates. So advocates are also very important because you can ask each person to say, hey, can you recommend 3 people that I can talk to who might be interested in my service, right? And usually if you ask 5 people to introduce you to 3 people, that means about 15 conversations. At least one of them might say, hey, you know what? I might give you a shot. Then with your offer, reduce the barrier to entry by giving some kind of a freemium or free version of whatever you're doing. So I always say, take the money that you would have invested into high-end marketing, especially if you don't have any money, and deduct that from the cost of your service. So if you charge $100 and you would have spent $20 on marketing, deduct that $20 from that $100 and give that to your customer and tell them, hey, for 2 days or for 3 days, I can give you a free version of whatever I'm doing. Because what tends to happen is that nobody can challenge something that's good value. And if you think about it critically, this is actually the blueprint for your marketing campaign when you actually have some money. Number one, ask your customers questions. Number two, build a community of customers or potential customers and potential advocates, right? Number three, ask them directly to refer you to other people. Number four, you have a very simple offer that reduces the barrier to entry where people can get some value without actually parting ways with cash, especially if you're starting out for the first time, because nobody trusts you yet. Then everyone can verify that when I did this, or when I got a free lemonade, or I got a free consultant, whatever that is, I got lots of value, and this is something I'm willing to spend $100 on, right? And then the beautiful thing about that is now you have testimonials and you have a portfolio, because now you have 5 people that you've done this for, and you can tell other people that this is what you did. So that's generally where I would say you should start. Then the second thing is, this is where I'm going to shamelessly plug my business, workspaceglobal.com. The idea, Workspace Global just literally pairs you with a design team to help build your branding and marketing systems. And I know, especially if you're doing things on your own, coming up with your own designs for your social media posts and things like that can be very difficult. So it's really good for you to have a system. Even if you can't pay for a team long term, let them build your templates, let them build, just little things that, you can use ChatGPT to put things in and still look very nice and professional. Have a presentation, little things like that. So you have your marketing system of templates and things that you can use when, to be able to go out and show up properly. Those two things, if you pair that together on a very limited budget, will get you at least your first 5 to 20 customers. And I promise you, you can turn things around from there. So that's what I would recommend.
One of the things I appreciate about what you shared is that not only is the advice so tangible and so practical, it's actually the tool to generate revenue. It's amazing how you can use marketing and branding principles that you need on zero budget, and that's actually what will drive the revenue so that you can have a budget. Fantastic.
Exactly that. Yes.
Let's say someone is at the intermediate or advanced stage of business, and they're really ready. They've made it through those first few years, and they're feeling like it's time to up level. What's the first element of that in terms of branding or marketing that they should invest in, and what's the most cost-effective way to go about it?
The big one is there needs to be a place where people can very easily find your information. So usually what people struggle to do is that people invest in trying to build awareness without sending people somewhere, right? Or sometimes wherever they send people, it's an inefficient way to communicate. So for example, a phone number, if it's not available 24/7 to be answered with a script that, gives people information very quickly, is not a very good place to send people, to do stuff, unless you have, you've dedicated time to do that. So if you're a bit further along in your journey, number one, really articulate your information in a very simple way and find a place to put it, and let your marketing in the most effective way send people there. Right. So you might be surprised that you don't need billboards to be able to do that. That simple WhatsApp broadcast or a TikTok video to 5,000 people might be able to send a lot of people to a landing page, or even, for me, I'm very scrappy sometimes, even if it's a Google Doc, right, with a letterhead on top of it, that is very clear and very concise. You would be surprised. Now, what tends to happen is most people don't understand what their pipeline is. And what that means is your customers in marketing, your customers are at different stages of motivation levels, right? And different stages of their buyer readiness. So there's people who know nothing about you. There's people who've heard of you. There's people who are interested in learning more. There's people who recognize the value but haven't made a decision to buy. There's people who are like, I'm thinking about the decision to buy. Why don't you tell me more? And then there's people who are like, I'm ready to buy, but if you say the wrong thing, I'm not going to buy. So you can see how many stages this is. And most people are skipping so many of those stages and are missing out. Their pipeline is leaking because even though people are coming through, they are not able to take them from one stage to another because maybe you hit them too early or sometimes you hit them too late, right? So these are some of the things that most people need to think about. And then you need to have assets at every stage that addresses people of that area. So a landing page may be for someone who's like they're ready to buy and they're thinking about the offer. An informational website might be somebody who's just exploring to learn more. A social media post or a short video might be somebody who might just be interested, and a static post saying, hey, we do this. It might be for somebody who knows nothing about you. So that is just something that I would say people need to invest in and make sure that that is crisp and clear. And you need to know what each stage is doing. So you need to find a way to track some of these things. So most people don't know how many people came to their website. That is a bad thing because if 100 people came to your website and one person clicked on that button, you need to ask yourself, why? Is there something that the website is doing that doesn't, what they call convert the person to clicking? And converting doesn't always mean buying. It just means the person moved from stage 1 to stage 2. So if you're more senior in your marketing journey, I would say get very clear on building this infrastructure and knowing how to measure that infrastructure, because that's the way that you will know if whatever you've put out in your marketing is effective or is not effective.
Brilliant. So for our people who are just starting, that might have been a little overwhelming because
A
you're
lot, yeah,
speaking
exactly.
directly to people who are in it, and that's the question is to up level. One thing,
Yeah.
something I want to encourage people, it has been my experience in building businesses, is that you build your pipeline kind of one piece at a time, and you don't necessarily have your pipeline until you get a little ways into your business. So if you're
True.
just starting, there's no expectation to know all these steps. It's a kind of a trial and error, and you build it piece by piece. And then you have to go back in and plug the holes. You're like, oh, wait, I have a pipeline, except it's spewing. And you plug
That's a big one.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's great advice. And I think that that's something that for business owners is part of I don't know, do you coach your clients to look at that, like evaluate
Yes.
yearly, or how often would you suggest?
It depends on what your sales cycle is. So I make a hypothesis of how quickly it takes my customers to move from not knowing me to make a purchase. And I always recruit customers. I think you see the word I'm using. I recruit customers in cohorts. So usually I would say, hey, I would like to have 10 customers this month. So I estimate how long it takes me to get, maybe about 20 people who are interested and 10 people to come through. And then based on that, I will evaluate, so it could be monthly, it could be every 3 months, it could be every 6 months. If you're the kind of business that just has one client a year and they pay you $500,000, it could be a year, so it depends on you. But that cycle should be evaluated based on, number one, how often you want to recruit customers and how often you want to evaluate that. That's what I would say.
That's great. I like that benchmark. You, Sydney, as your personal brand, you have evolved a lot in the
Yes, I
last
have.
10, 14, 15 years, going
Yes.
from starting as a student and building a business, building Workspace Global, starting your nonprofit Openspace, you're a global speaker. Obviously, you're brilliant as a podcast and YouTube guest. What is your strategy for keeping your personal brand, or whether that's Workspace Global? What is your strategy for keeping it fresh and relevant?
I take on a bit of an anti-strategy in the sense that my personal brand is wherever I'm at in my life. Just recently, I really recognized, it's interesting. I need a lot of coaching to recognize that I am the product, right? And things come out of me. So very previously, I used to believe that I was what I produced. So my business is what made my brand, or the amount of money that I make is what made my brand. But technically, people just want to be around me and people just want to hear from me and people want to work for me, actually, all because of my brand. So I started to recognize, my journey is my brand. And so the idea that, because I'm the entrepreneur's entrepreneur, that's my vibe, right? Like I'm not making it look all slick. I'm not like, I don't have like one journey, perfect journey where it's like I'm only a lawyer and that's all I've ever been. No. It does get messy. Sometimes I'm more focused on family. So if you go through my social media posts, you will see I talk about my family a lot. On other times this year, I'm talking a lot about friendship. I just bring out where I'm at in my business, and it's actually a very good hack for you because your brand is actually your business journey. So your business's brand is your business's journey in a way. And that's the easiest way because number one, it's authentic. Number two, you don't need to make it up, right? Like it's you can literally whip out your phone and just say, hey guys, we're boarding up stuff right now to ship on Amazon, and that's your brand. People love that, scrappy, real story. And as long as you're making progress, you're in a good space, So that is how I've been able to manage the evolution of my brand. But the idea is that my customer hasn't changed. I still serve entrepreneurs and founders, and I'm trying to create impact for creatives and job seekers in Africa. That hasn't changed. And by advice, I support corporates as well. So that has always been a very nice triangle that has always stayed the same, and my brand kind of has evolved along that. So that's my personal strategy. I hope that might be helpful for someone.
I think it's very helpful because you talk about when it's authentic and it's you, it's sustainable because there's no making things up. There's no putting on airs. There's no putting out something that is or isn't true. It's great to have, big visions and maybe,
Mm,
fall short a little bit. And then everyone's cheering you on whenever you make it. And
exactly.
I like that. That feels very in the flow and very sustainable for all of us as business owners.
I agree.
So if there is a myth in
Mm.
branding or marketing, I'm sure that there are many. I'm sure that you've heard it all. But if there was one that really comes to mind, a myth in branding or marketing, what would that be?
Number one, that it is expensive. And number two, that it is reserved for people further along the line. So those are the two key things that, you will spend as much as you value your branding and marketing and or as much as you're able to innovate, right? So I love to innovate on cost. If you ask yourself the real questions often enough, right? So let's just say, hey, how much is it going to cost me to get 100 customers? Maybe $5,000. Why? Because we need to run some LinkedIn ads. Why? Because your customers are business people and they'd like to be on LinkedIn. That sounds interesting. Why? And if you keep going deep, deep, deep down, probably ask why about 8 to 10 times, you probably recognize that your customers like to go to the office every day and probably buy coffee. And if you put a sticker on their coffee cups, you would still get the same amount of messaging, that you would have done on a LinkedIn ad, if you get what I mean. So most people are not innovating or asking why long enough and basically just go with the first solution that they have. And then the solution is too expensive. And then they do not invest in the right kind of marketing or they don't invest in marketing at all, right? So you need to think about the fact that the marketing ecosystem needs people to market. So people want to charge you for marketing, but it does not necessarily mean you need to pay high prices to market your product. That's the first thing. The second thing is, again, you don't need to be further along. For example, if you know a friend with lots of followers on Instagram or TikTok, right? You could say, I don't think of them as an influencer, think of them as a friend. And then ask them to interview you, like do a live together about your time in school and your journeys together. And in that, you can talk about your business and why you're doing it. And if that's authentic enough, then you'd be surprised that that person with 100,000 followers will have 10,000 people showing up on that live and going like, oh, I really like your friend. Where can I go and learn more about that stuff? If you get what I mean, so, and you could do that even before you start. I've really learned that the idea of a wait list, it even goes even further than that. I even believe people should pay you before they receive the products, which is like a very controversial topic for a lot of people. But I'm like, give a very strong guarantee that you will refund 100% if you're not happy with if something goes wrong. but ask them to pay upfront if you can, if that works in your industry. So that way you don't actually have to pay for anything or build anything to get revenue, because revenue is people paying for the perception of value.
Mm.
So that's just something to think about. So just having that in mind, I'm not encouraging people to do that immediately, but I'm just saying similarly, you don't need to be further down the line. You don't need to be like a proper business to do marketing, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You can start your marketing immediately by just being innovative with what you have around you. So those are the two big myths that I would love to debunk right now.
I like that you shared those and that you also offered the solutions around them. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Sydney, you're obviously such a giver and such a kind and gentle soul, and you care so much. When one cares as much as you do, it can be a lot some
It
days.
is a lot. Yes.
So I'd like to switch, and we've talked a little bit about you personally, but mostly on the business. I'd like to talk a little bit more about you personally as the entrepreneur's entrepreneur. You talk a lot about asking why, and you asking why in terms of what the decisions you make, as well as with respect to your customers. But what's your why? Like, what keeps you going on the tough days?
There's a macro perspective and then there's a micro perspective. The micro perspective is me personally, and the macro perspective is what I want to do for the world. Okay. So I'll start with the micro perspective. And someone asked me recently when I would feel like I've made it in life, right? And I said, an interesting answer to that question is I have already made it in life. I feel like I have everything I've always wanted, in the sense that, just basically I'm very content with my life right now. Now, I've been in this state for about a year or two, but I didn't know it until a couple months ago. And so I really recognize that it's really important for people to be able to see clearly. That is my gift. I love to have conversations to help people see clearly. And sometimes I don't have to be the one to help them. I love to facilitate spaces. Recently, I did a boys and burgers night for fathers and husbands to come around and just complain about our wives, right? And it wasn't a bad thing. I don't mean to step on anyone's toes, but basically a lot of people recognize that, firstly, their wives are very different from them. But I love them. They love them anyway. They love them a lot. It's just that usually they're not able to see clearly in those moments. So they're just frustrated. So one of my biggest things are that people can find a lot more happiness and joy if they can just see clearly, if they can perceive things for what's actually true and not what they think it's true. So that's my first why. And this is where my nonprofit comes in and why I did all of that. It goes into all of that stuff. The second thing is that I believe entrepreneurs on the macro level are the perfect army of people to create change in the world, right? Sustainable change, because they're finding problems. They're obsessed about problems. They will keep working on it. They're trying to make money from it, which makes it sustainable in its own way, right? And it's very grassroots or very large. It does something that the governments can't really do always, or international development organizations can't really do. But entrepreneurs will, at least, if somebody needed to sell sun hats in a village somewhere in Africa, it's likely that an entrepreneur there would be the one to figure it out, if you get what I mean. So I believe if I can empower enough entrepreneurs and they can empower enough more entrepreneurs, we will have an army of people who are working on creating a better world anyway, whether they have the money or they don't, and they're motivated to keep doing it. So those are the two things that really get me going.
Brilliant. In pursuing your why, it's important, I think, if you talk about getting clarity, I think clarity comes with slowing down a bit. It doesn't happen when we're moving at the speed of light. When it comes to your self-care, how do you recharge so that you can get the clarity that you need on where you are and to be able to help others, plus to be able to help entrepreneurs make sustainable change in the world?
Wow.
Oh, and how you're such a great dad and husband. There's recharging that comes along with that too.
That's a major one. The secret to the dad and husband is that I treat it all as work. So everything goes into my calendar, and I obey my calendar like like nobody's business. So my time with my wife is in my calendar. My time with my son is in my calendar. And I just follow that, because I'm not a very organized person. So I defer to the things that keep me organized. So my wife knows she has my time, these 4 hours a day in my calendar every day. I work only 3 days a week as well. As my life has progressed, I'm trying to reduce the amount of time that I work or take meetings. I take meetings for only 2 days a week. And those things naturally, very slowly, are really helping me to fulfill some of the personal and professional things at the same time, which also shows that I work very crazy. Like I work at a very intense rate. How I recharge, that's been a hard one for me. I normally take a walk by myself, or sometimes with my son in his pram, because I'm moving. I can think. I don't take my phone. I don't listen to music. I just let my mind wander, and naturally, I find myself starting to make sense of things that was happening across the day. And what most people don't notice is that they're receiving a lot of stimulus all the time, not just your phone, but like even, the sound of the bus, every day, little things in your world that are just occupying space in your mind. And if you're able to clear that out on a walk, that's really, really good. The other thing I do is I like to say I write, but I don't really write. So I record voice notes. So I record voice notes to my future self, like kind of like my diary in a way. And that really helps me to, and take it easy. So yeah, on the macro perspective, I don't yet have an answer to that in terms of how I recharge. I guess when I see people do better, like I get happy.
I've asked a lot of people this question, but I've never heard anyone say that they make voice memos to themselves, to their future selves. And I think that's brilliant because I talk a lot about the value of quiet time and having that time. And journaling is something like what you talked about, you don't really write, but the voice memos to your future self is probably even better because you could always just have them transcribed if you ever.
Honestly, literally, yeah.
That's a great tool, and it's so easy. Well, making time for it though,
Yes,
making voice memos is easy, but it's creating the time and
to do
space
that.
and the
Yeah.
clarity
Mm,
to feel into your spirit and feel what's happening and feel the divine guidance that you're being given to
mm.
that. Before I ask my last question, Sydney, what's the most efficient way for people to connect with you and your work?
Okay, so I've done a very ballsy thing. So my LinkedIn is very open. So it's Sydney Scott Sam on LinkedIn. If you send me a message, at least within 24 hours, I will always respond, no matter who it is, and no matter how many messages I get, I would always respond. And the challenging thing is I have my calendar right under my name on LinkedIn. So anybody in the world at any time can book 15 minutes of my time. So that is, if it's really important, you can just go there and I will grant you 15 minutes of my time to give you some clarity. Obviously, I'll probably try and build a coaching relationship from there. Because obviously I need to eat. But the idea is give first, and when people find value, they give you back. So that is the best way to reach me. Sydney Scott Sam on LinkedIn. Send me a message. I'll always respond, or you can book an appointment in my calendar right there.
Perfect. Everyone is on LinkedIn. My entire audience
Yes.
is on LinkedIn. They may
Yeah.
not be on the others, but they're on LinkedIn. So that's perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
What is your biggest vision for
Mm,
Workspace Global?
that's a good question. I mean, I started this with the whole idea that I'm a fantastic designer and I absolutely hate designing. Um, yeah, as an entrepreneur, it just sucks the life out of me to have to put together a presentation or a proposal. And I know there are a lot of platforms to help you DIY it. And I know there are a lot of platforms to, help you with AI to get that done. But not a lot of people always have that creative knack to even know when they've done something good, right? So my biggest thing is I want to change the way the world gets its creative work done. So similar to how Uber basically changed the way you hail a ride forever and everybody's doing that, or Airbnb changed the accommodation space. I want to change the done for you creative space. DIY people, you guys can still have Canva, but there's a bunch of us who would love somebody else to do it for them. Finding a freelancer is too much work. Paying for an agency is too much work or too expensive. I just want to be able to go to a place and instantly be paired with somebody, and that person is going to be managed. I know how much I'm paying. I know exactly when I'm going to get it, and I know it's going to be good quality. So I want to change the world, the way the world gets access to its creative work. So that's I'm hoping to do about 100,000 entrepreneurs and teams supported by my platform by 2030. And I want to be the biggest recruiter of African creative talent in Africa. So that's the biggest thing. So I'm trying to do 25,000, but I'm hoping I can push on to 1 million over the next 15 to 20 years, because, Africa is going to be the youngest population by 2050, and we're probably going to have over 1 billion people, right? Mm-hmm. These people need work to do. Immigration, staying in countries, there's so many issues around people moving from country to country. If people can just work right from where they are and earn dollars and make a good living and take care of their families, I believe everyone's going to be happy, because the rest of the world gets great, affordable services, good quality services that are risk-free because we handle all the risk. And people in Africa get great remote work to do. And that's my big vision, for my business. So yeah.
That's amazing. Sydney, something that came to me thinking about the Africans that you want to serve. When I think about the family, and when people feel like they have to move for a job, young people feel so much pressure there. There's an expectation to take care of their family.
Yes.
So when you are creating an environment and a space where anyone who wants to can stay in their hometown and meet their familial obligations, then that makes life just so much better for everybody. The elders are taken care of. Everyone feels safe and secure, or more safe, more secure. I know that there's a lot of volatility, but at least as far as the family unit goes, they keep that in place. And that's a tremendous value as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I really hope to create a lot more accessibility. So with the more money that we make, we will probably partner with people who can install more internet connection and more spaces. I want to partner with companies that are able to lease laptops. So even if you can't afford a laptop, we can send you a laptop and you can pay for it over a couple of years. Mm-hmm. And then also I want to do virtual training. So even if you have no skills, as long as you can consume information, you can gain the skills to start working for us and get some work to do. So these are all the things that are in the pipeline to really help make a better world.
One of the things I saw that you wrote, or you said somewhere, is that you transform people and transform brands to get to the global stage. And Sydney, what you have shared with us today is profound. And I think that the marketing principles that you've shared are obviously going to evergreen. They're going to be around forever. But even the trends that you shared, I think that you're really on the cutting edge. And so these are trends that are going to continue to elevate and accelerate in the coming years. So tremendous, tremendous value. And I can see how your coaching clients must absolutely love you. Your customers must love you. Your team must love you.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
I really appreciate your contribution to our planet. And thank you for being on the show.
Awesome, Trisha. It's been such an honor and such a gift to be here.